What's up, guys? Welcome to part 7, and in this part we're basically building back through the piece in color, just giving some love and attention to the areas that I hadn't really established too much after I had laid in the general colors and got them sort of situated. So the first thing I wanted to approach was giving him a collarbone, because I felt like a little weird to just not have a collarbone, and also to give him a little bit of surface texture on his chest, this like kind of like raggedy battled skin. So I did that first, and then I was like, you know what? I kind of want to try and approach the skull and give it a little more detail, polish it slightly, just to see what it looks like without going too overboard. So I figured I'd dabble in that for a little while, and I did. But at the end, it still brought up too much in just general detail that it just took away from the look I was trying to achieve. So I ended up doing away with that layer eventually. Now just cleaning things up, and then I decided, you know what, we need to really tackle the crown. I wasn't really happy with the crown. I was happy with like this general blocking that I had, but I was like, you know, we really need to build this up, and I need to really figure out what sort of surface texture or imperfections it's going to have, and if I want it to be really reflective, or if I want it to have a lot of, I want it to be more of like a kind of a dull matte. Maybe matte's not the best word, but like kind of more of a dull finish. So this is me just kind of trial and error. I wasn't really sure how to approach this because I've never really painted a crown before, or at least a crown of this type. So it's a lot of just back and forth, building things up and then mushing them around and then changing it because I didn't like how it looked. And then I started to realize, well, I wasn't bringing enough contrast in. And I wanted to I was like, okay, well, maybe if I throw in different value or different colors, that'll kind of give it a little more pop. So that's what I started doing here. I started throwing in some like dark purples and dark blues, and throwing in some greens and whatnot. And then I start popping in some really, really high chroma yellows. And I was like, okay, this is starting to go in the direction that I'm enjoying. I like this. It's a little weird, but I'm okay with it. So it's just kind of building on top of that and experimenting. And not focusing too much on like the general idea I have in my head. Most of the time when I paint this stuff, I have a general image in my head of what I'm looking for. Granted, 9 times out of 10, you don't ever get the image that you perceive in your head as the actual finished product on the canvas. Unfortunately, that's always an uphill battle for all artists. I would assume, at least from my perspective. There are times where I do pieces like this, and they go almost, I wouldn't say almost exactly to plan, but very close, about 75% of accuracy to what like I envisioned mentally. Whereas this, I originally wanted like some crazy engravings on the crown and maybe a jewel in it, and then way back in the first stages when I had kind of done some engravings and mocked them in and roughed them up, I just wasn't a fan of it. So I kind of like tossed that idea, and I was like, you know what, let's do more surface imperfections, but still make it kind of polished. And then I was like, you know, let's get a little weird with it. Let's pop in some really wild colors, some like really high chroma purples and some pinks, maybe some blues. So that's basically what I start doing here. Is I'm like, you know, let's get weird with it. Let's really make that shadow side pop, but let's not overdo it. Plus, I was like, okay, well, if the scepter, subconsciously, I wasn't really paying attention. I was like, yeah, let's just play with color. But then after laying most of the stuff in, I'm like, oh, well, the scepter is kind of bright and it's close to his head. So, you know, you could have some, you know, reflective light coming off of that, or some just generated light from it coming off of that that's basically being projected onto the crown. So I was like, okay, you know what, that light works. We'll just keep that. That's fine. I think that looks neat. It's different, and it works, and it helps also separate that edge of shadow. It gives it a little rim lighting, and a little bit of rim lighting can go a long way and make things really stand out and pop, but not push too far out to kind of cluster, or not cluster, to over clutter an area. So you get it's a nice complement of touch at times, depending on where it's implemented. Sometimes it's overdone. I was trying not to overdo it, just really being careful about like where I'm putting value and how I'm putting it, and making sure that the shapes aren't overly compromising, I guess would be the word I want to use. But it's just really building back through here and just playing with color and seeing what I feel suits the crown. And I also wanted to start to build an edge, because before the crown just looked like, you know, a flat piece of paper. It looked like those crowns you get from Burger King when you're a kid. I don't even know if they still do that anymore. I feel like I just dated myself, but that's basically what I'm trying to do. I wanted to create a little more three-dimensionality to the crown, and I wanted it to be a little thicker and have edges, and these edges be a little battle-torn and beaten and, you know, dinked, and have all kinds of surface imperfections like the rest of the crown, and really just give it character. And honestly, the way I approached the crown, looking back at it now, I'm really happy that I did that. And then I was like, you know what? Not to dismiss the crown, but I was like, well, let's try some of that rim lighting on the back. And I'm like, it just doesn't. It looks it's almost like overdoing it. So I ended up doing away with that. I didn't really like it. I thought it was over compromising what I had already established, and it took away from the direction I wanted the piece to go. But I did decide to have a little bit of fun here after I've settled on pretty much what I've done with the crown. And I'm like, you know, let's bring this up in value. Let's really make this little edge of the armor that's catching light from the front. Let's make it really pop and saturate it with that value, saturate it with color, really make it shine. And that's basically, I was, you know, honestly, at first I was like, maybe not the best idea, but I was really happy with how that turned out. And then I decided to jump over to the skull here, and I was like, you know, that just giving that corner of armor some love and attention really made it stand out, but it wasn't over compromising to like what I've already established. So then I'm like, all right, well, let's try it with the skull here. Let's hit the skull with a little more detail and bring it up a little and polish. Really establish some of the values that I've already kind of gently laid in. So that's what I was doing there. And then I was like, okay, if I'm gonna do that and build up through a little bit of the skull, then let's jump over to the scepter, and we'll do a little bit of love and attention to the scepter and build up some of those like lights and really kind of get a good lighting system going across the piece like that. It's not over compromising, and it doesn't oversaturate anything or get in the way or clutter the image, but at the same time still adds value and is overall visually appealing to the viewer and to myself. So I never really want to overburden a piece, and I think that's a mistake some people make. They put too much in a piece, and then it's too cluttered and oversaturated with elements, too many variables, and then the original subject matter is then overpowered by the other subjects and other elements that are added to the piece to try and distribute and adjust the composition. But in the end, it just kind of hurts it. So that's kind of what I was trying to avoid with this. And then at this point, I'm just kind of having some fun here. I'm just messing around with some value for the fingers and creating these like really cool weird swirls, just making it neat and unique, more or less, but nothing crazy. I'm still trying to follow my lighting that I've established across the piece and the colors I've established, and I don't want to give up that general atmosphere that I'm going for here of what I've already established. And I don't want things to become overpowered, and I don't want to over polish anything. It's just like very minute detail changes, and honestly, it's going a long way. I didn't intend to do this much work on this side and bring the hand up in polish and overall contrast and color as much as I did, or even in just general value. I wasn't expecting to really dive this deep into the hand and the details of it, but I'm really happy that I did, because it really made it pop. It kind of pushed it that extra mile. But overall, now we're nearing the end of this piece. There is one more part after this, but it's just like very minute details, if I remember correctly. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure it's just like very minor adjustments and whatnot. I'll have to look at the video file later, but I really hope that you guys enjoyed this whole series, this whole process. And I think what I'm gonna do is once I'm done, I'm gonna take all the videos that I've established for this series, and I'm gonna try and mush them all into like one whole cohesive time-lapse speed piece, so you guys can see from start to finish without any, talking over the piece. Basically the what's the word I'm looking for? The piece coming to fruition and building through, and maybe I'll put some nice music with it or something, just to give you something fun to watch, something peaceful. But yeah, just building back through here, really. Accidentally launched my music software there, but yeah, just minor adjustments, little tweaks, that kind of thing. Nothing really crazy at this point. Yeah. Overall, I'm very happy with the piece, but we are running out of time, so I'm going to close this video out here, and thank you guys for watching, and I hope you enjoyed, and I look forward to sharing more of my processes of painting in the future, and I hope this series paves the way for future series, and I hope you guys find these helpful. And yeah, bye guys, have a great day.